Brad, one of my favorite things reading the X-Men when I was growing up was, do you remember the character of Cypher, Brad? The X-Men that could understand any spoken language. They could read and understand and speak any spoken language. Their name was Cypher.
Yes, I remember Cypher vaguely.
Okay, so my favorite thing as a budding comics writer, I always wanted to see this in a story where it was like, Wolverine, you take out the giant death-dealing robot by slicing off its head. Colossus, you're made of solid steel. You punch its legs out from underneath it. Storm, you created an electromagnetic whirlwind that'll fry its circuits. And Cypher, run like hell! Run away! Go hide under a bridge! Get the heck out of here! Don't... Good God, you're useless to us as a team! Just run, man, run! But if you see anybody, go see if you can order us some of those baguettes that have the lovely, like, cheese and the ham. The French do that really well. You speak language is great. Go order that for us.
Yeah, at what point do they are they just like trying to give him something so he doesn't feel bad, right? Like, oh, Cypher, I've got this instruction manual from IKEA. We need your help.
Oh, yeah, they're just around the mansion. Oh, Cypher, Google Translate apparently doesn't work today. So by the way, works fine. It doesn't work, so we need you to teach us how to say good morning in Portuguese, if you could do that for us.
Cypher, someone accused me of having Schadenfreude, and I just don't understand what that could mean. Please, I'm desperate. Please tell me what that word means.
Cypher, Colossus is useless in helping us with Russian. Could you help us with Russian? Colossus in the background, like, what? I know. Anyway, yeah, but the idea that, like, the X-Men are these, they have these world-changing powers. They can conquer anything. And then Cypher's the skinny guy in the background going, like, would anyone like to know how to do a battle cry in Portuguese?
A Portuguese battle cry.
I could obviously say that in Mandarin if anyone likes. And on that note, I'll say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics
and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. And first of all, we got to say that this show is going out live right now to our VIP pals and members over at patreon.com/comiclab at the $10 level. That is ComicLab Live Gab. Goes out live as a stream every week, Tuesday at the same time, and is archived. So if you have work or school or family that gets in the way, you can watch the archived live stream over at Live Gab. Once again, it's at patreon.com/comiclab. And Bradley J., our sponsor for this week's the good folks at Wacom at WACOM.com, the makers of the Wacom One.
The proud, professional, portable, powerful Wacom One, often seen on my back deck as the weather is still nice enough for me to go out there and work. I really love being able to take that thing wherever I go and be able to get professional results while I'm there.
And let me just say, Brad's not joking about drawing out of the back deck, because I've been getting a number of photos with a glass of red wine, and he's not even joking about the Wizard's brazier, that blue glass flame that he has on his back deck. He keeps like, this is what I get from Brad Geiger. So I'm drawing out in the back with the Wacom, and here's what the fire looks like at 5 p.m. Here's what the fire looks like at 6 p.m. Here's what the fire looks like at 8 p.m. Isn't this nice? Every time of day, it looks beautiful. So yes, Wacom and the makers of the Wacom One over at WACOM.com. And Bradley J., we got a big show for everybody this week with a really fun question right up front.
Yeah, so here's one that comes in from our Patreon backer, George Mackay, who says, with creator-owned IPs like Hilda becoming a critically acclaimed success as an animated property on Netflix, do you think that this is the next holy grail for creators to aim for? Getting your property picked up by a studio and released on a streaming service? In this day and age, has this replaced the old goal of I want to see my comic in the papers? Would you guys ever consider turning Sheldon, Drive, or Evil Inc. into such an animated property if a studio backed up a ton of cash to your driveway and offered to help make it? Love the show. It's an absolute highlight of my week and has me grinning from ear to ear. My wife can't stand the show, but she's got poor taste. Have a great week. So that comes
What? Why was that necessary to put at the end? What?
Well, it's also, I mean, it's a self-burn, because if your wife has poor taste and she married you, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, there's a bigger problem there. I do love that, though. Like, do you ever get this from readers, Brad, where you'll be like, oh, Brad, love Evil Link, love everything about it. You can't draw your way out of a box, but I love Evil Link. And you're like, why did you say that last part? Why would you even, have you ever got an email like that where you're like, no, stop right there. Don't keep talking. Just say, I like your comic.
It's the classic, that line from the comic convention where the guy said, I was saying to my wife how Dave's combined great writing with so-so art, and he's really making a go of it. It's that same thing. It's like, you know what? Stop. Just stop at the compliment. We're all good. I don't need to know about your wife and her horrible taste in podcasts. Leave her out of this.
So the idea of the Netflix show being the final goal is an interesting one. This is a fun one to talk about. Before we do, Brad, can I just mention Hilda real quick? Because so Hilda is now a TV show on Netflix. But I just want to mention a fun little story. So I was in Angoulême, the big French comic show. This was, I don't know, 6 years ago. And Luke Pearson was there. Luke is the one who created Hilda, a British cartoonist and writer. And because Luke was literally like the only other English speaking cartoonist there, I was like, hey, Luke, I'm gonna buy a book for my kids from you. Can I get you to sketch a Hilda for me? And he did sketch a Hilda for me. And Brad, I turned around from the line. I walked back out and I went and got a glass of wine. I'm sitting at a cafe and I'm like, I'm gonna look through the Hilda book. And Brad, I had bought the French version of Hilda. I didn't buy the English version, so Luke sketched in the French version. I don't speak French. And so I was like, gosh darn it, I can't go back and be like, hey, Luke, I bought the wrong version.
David, if only you had a superhero nearby who was able to translate that for you. You
tried to call out to Professor X, please send Cypher. I need help. I'm in a small French cafe in Angoulême. I don't speak French, and I just bought a French book. Luke's, by the way, congratulations to Luke. That is fantastic that I think Netflix now has 3 seasons of Hilda, which is great.
Yeah.
And as far as whether that's the new goal, I would say that is a new goal. I don't know that I would describe it as the new goal. And I'll tell you why. I think it is at any stage of a career, it's sort of a winnowing down, a sort of pyramid step up, if you can imagine it, like becoming a professional cartoonist. That's the wide base at the bottom of a pyramid. The next step up is, I don't know, you get a 4-book deal, right? Okay, that's great. The next book, this next step up, and each one is up. And the final one is you get a 3-movie deal from some studio, right? That's But what I'm getting at is the number of people at the top of that pyramid is very small. So it's a hard goal to shoot for. Frankly, the one that brings me more joy and I think is more realistic for everybody is just make a continuing livable career that you can continue to work at and retire with. To me, that is a very achievable and livable dream. It's still a dream that you can work hard to and achieve. And one of the things that's tricky about saying, oh, Netflix is my goal, or Amazon is streaming, or Apple TV is streaming is my goal, is you can do everything right, and the forces that be, it's still not right for Apple TV or Netflix or Amazon. But you can find your tribe and find an audience online and find an audience as a cartoonist and make a wonderful living out of it and never be seen by larger powers that be. And you're perfectly fine with that. Brad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, if you remember, last year we had the delightful Gloria Calderon-Kellett as a guest on the show, and we talked about this topic. And my thought was, as we're heading into lockdown, people are going to be looking for a lot more animated series, and we followed that idea up. And Gloria gave us some real world perspective on just how complicated that actually is, right? And the fact that there's a whole lot more there than meets the eye. And when you say is a streaming deal the goal for people who do what we do, you've always got to remember that, yes, like in a certain way, if somebody wanted to make an animated Evil Inc., that would be something that I would absolutely, without a doubt, enter into those talks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to also go in with open eyes and realize that there might be some caveats to that deal that you don't like. You might have to give up a certain amount of your own rights to your work. I've heard of situations where the person signed the deal and then had to stop making their own comic because the people who had bought the rights didn't want to flood the landscape with this content and wanted scarcity to make the movie stronger. So you had a situation where a cartoonist had to stop doing their comic because that's what they signed those rights away in order to get the movie produced.
Right.
And I don't know that movie.
By the way, that's a bad deal. Don't take that deal. That's a bad deal. Because ideally what you want is something like a deal like a Scott Pilgrim where the movie does well, but then your books just go through the roof in terms of sales because of the knock-on marketing from the movie, that kind of thing. That's the ideal situation for a book.
And that's something that that's the bigger question. Is this the Holy Grail? No. Is it an opportunity that you should consider? Sure. But like any other time that you go from being a self-employed entrepreneur to being someone that's working with a large corporate interest that doesn't have your interest at heart, you want to get a really strong lawyer behind you to make sure you understand everything about what you're getting into without the stars in your eyes. Really understand. Yeah, they may be backing up a whole truckload of money, like this person says, but that's a finite amount. And if it's going to hurt your ability into perpetuity, that may be a bad deal. So I would say, is it the goal? No. Is it something that you could consider? Sure. Just go in with your eyes open.
Well, yeah. And talking about the money, sometimes people don't realize that there are some deals. Like when Netflix bought Millar World from Mark Millar and Wisely, who owned his own titles, like the Jupiter's Legacy stuff and all that sort of stuff. So could sell it on. So that's, again, own and control your own work, right? Because there is the potential to do something like that at the end of the road for you. But so you hear about those Mark Millar, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it was somewhere in the $10 to $15 million range that they paid for Millar World for all his titles that were still outstanding, that were available. But then I know friends who have optioned their graphic novel or optioned their comic or optioned this or that. And it's not a lot of money, not world-changing amounts of money. 10,000, 20,000, 1,000. Like you can have very small amounts because the option is just basically the locking it down. They're not saying I'm going to do it. They're just saying I have the option of making it. If I can then get a production company signed on, if I can get a studio signed on, if I can get a voice acting, if I can get the animation leads signed on, all that sort of stuff. But there's still 1,000 ways for it to die on the crib there. From the time that it's been optioned. I have some friends, Brad, I will tell you after the show, who have optioned the same title 3 different times because the option has run out and nobody did anything with it. Right. So they optioned it. They had a 1 or 2 year option. Nothing happened. So they optioned it again. Fine, perfectly lovely. Another free $10,000. Nothing happens. 2 years go by. They optioned it a 3rd time. So listen, the odds are something's going to happen with that at some point. But I just want you to know that even optioning it is not a guarantee that something's going to be done with it. And in fact, even when they greenlight it and do it, there's still I can tell you from Gloria's career, there's still 1,000 ways for projects to die before anybody even gets the word of them. So she has had, one of the reasons I really respect my wife is she always has like 5, 6 projects going, and they're all at different stages because she has learned the hard way that there's a million ways to kill a project. When, like Brad said, it's a corporate master, there's 200 people involved in making that decision, and there's 1,000 things that are out of your control that you have no say in that can kill a project that is perfectly lovely and should exist.
Right. Now, and that in terms of that person that sold the same thing 3 different times, that actually sounds perfectly dandy if it's a standalone thing that's off to the side. If that's your core pursuit, if that's the thing that you've been doing audience building on, and that's the thing that you've kind of built an awful lot of steam behind over the years, that actually sounds horrible because it's very limiting in the overall money that you could be making with this thing. So I could see it working any number of different ways. For somebody that wants to have a standalone thing that's off to the side optioned, sounds great. If it's your core comic that you've been working on for maybe 20 years doing audience building on, that's something that I would handle a lot more delicately.
And then one other thing to consider is, and Brad touched on this as well, is that when you sell a project to a large media corporation, you have to remember that your control, for all intents and purposes, stops right there at the door.
Yeah.
Like they may glad hand you and smile like, we're going to be a partner in this. You're going to be, we value you as the creator, but they have every right at that point to say like, well, we just bought the title, or we just bought the concept and we're going to change it entirely. I mean, if you want to see about how badly a project can change, look at the final version of Men in Black 1 versus the comic of Men in Black, you know?
Yeah.
And in terms of how that story plays out, how that whole thing goes. And there's a million other comics that are graphic novels that you can see that differ wildly from their media adaptation. And that's as intended, because comics aren't necessarily written for the screen. The screen is not necessarily written for the comics. It has to change. Yeah. So obviously there's going to be some differentiation. But one of the things you just have to know going in is that you lose the control that you had as an owner, operator, controller of your comic. So that's a little bit eye-opening for some people, because they come to the realization that like, oh, this is not at all how it should have been done. Well, you sold the rights, and that's what happens.
So, Dave, let's move on to our next topic for today. This is a question sent in from our Patreon backer, Mark Ashworth, who says, at the time I'm writing this, the news is full of how the U.S. Post Office is going to get slower and more expensive. What are you two planning in order to handle this? What are we going to do, Dave, about the U.S. Postal Service?
Oh, this one's a little bit of a heartbreaker, because I know everyone likes to poke fun at it, but I actually greatly admire the U.S. Postal Service. The fact that you can send a letter from the Keys in Florida to Anchorage, Alaska, and it costs the same as it does to drive something, you know, one town over, is quite amazing. That you can send something 4,000 or 5,000 miles away and it costs next to nothing. Their on-time delivery is still great, I think, by most standards for what they have to deal with in terms of equipment and technology. It's still a great working job for the people that get it. I know a lot of people always make fun of it, that it's a boring job, and that might be true, but for certain people, that's the key to a wonderful middle-class life as a postal job. So I have loved the Postal Service, and it breaks my heart because, unfortunately, it's a bit of an artificial economic constraint that's been put on them since Congress passed that pre-funding that they have to do of their retirement fund. And so that's given them kind of a cash squeeze. And thankfully, I like this new test thing where the Postal Service is going to start doing what they do like in Japan, where they'll do check cashing. Have you seen that, Brad, that on the East Coast, the Postal Service?
I think that's a brilliant idea.
I know, because you're killing something that absolutely needs to be killed, which is the check cashing business,
right? Which
those people are terrible, and you're giving the Postal Service an extra influx of cash. So I have high hopes for that saving the Postal Service long term, and hopefully a congressional reworking of that funding. But I will say, in the short term, rates are going to go up around Christmas for this Christmas. So you need to be aware that you're going to have a temporary rate hike for Postal Service between now and December 25th. They're also slowing things down. That's Louis DeJoy's big innovation is, how about we slow it all down? How about we promise less? And boy, that is a bummer. That's just admittedly a bummer. And there's nothing that we as Postal Service consumers can do about that. The only thing that I would recommend is clarity and communication, because people have had about a 30 or 40 year expectation that when you send something first class in the U.S., no matter where the destination is, it arrives within 3 days. And so now the fact that it might be Brett, up to 5 or 6 days, if it's So we're getting it's inching towards a little bit more like Canada Post's delivery times. And if you've ever delivered anything with Canada Post, you send it in September and then you're like, I hope you get it in December. Oh boy. Good luck. Let's all pray on a wish.
So this topic came up in the ComicLab Discord server, and one of our friends, Dave Melke, came in and said, "Hey, you folks should try out Pirate Ship." And it's a new shipping thing similar to Indicia, where they are using USPS, but promising you discounted rates. And there's a lot of people who are very excited, very upbeat about Pirate Ship. And I think that if you don't have something set up yet, or even if you do and you're not that far along, Pirate Ship is something that deserves your attention. What I will tell you is this, based on no knowledge other than my own guess. Go ahead, Dave. I
was just going to say, for clarity's sake, David Malky had kindly suggested using Pirate Ship for international USPS shipping, I think, right? Specifically?
That is true.
Like, I'm sure it's still, they have pre-negotiated rates for a lot of things, and I'm sure, as David would say, they're still good US to US delivery. But he specifically was saying, I would recommend it for international. So
yeah. And if that's something that you do look at, the only thing I'm going to tell you is to remember it's still using United States Postal Service, right? They might give you a discount, and technically, I think you get a discount on USPS rates from Indicia as well. Pirate Ship, my guess is, being newer to the market, they might be eating a little bit of profits in order to get a whole bunch of people on board. And then later on, those rates will slowly drift upwards. That's kind of my guess on that. This whole, you're getting the lowest rates, even though it's United States Postal Service. I think that smells to me like a way to get a lot of people on board. And then once they got them in the system, it's the same thing. I'm reticent to leave Indicia because I've been using it for almost 20 years, right? Yeah. So I'm not going to look at Pirate Ship because I know even though Indicia might be slightly more expensive, I know everything there is to know about using Indicia. I don't want to start a new system. You know what I mean?
There's a learning and trust cost that you're not going to mess up something by using. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So I'm not going to jump, but it's the whole reason I think that Pirate Ship is doing that. My guess is that they're trying to build a big user base, and then later on, then those rates raise. So the question to Mark is, what are we planning to do about it? Absolutely nothing. There's nothing we can do about it. I mean, you can take a look at Pirate Ship with your eyes open, because those rates, my guess is, are going to raise. But what can you do about it overall? Absolutely nothing.
The only other action points I would say, Mark, is that this Christmas in particular is going to be a cluster of delivery and shipping problems for the entire world. Yeah. I mean, we already know this, like off the coast of Los Angeles, the Long Beach port, there are 71 haul boats from China that are parked off the coast because they don't have the longshoremen, they don't have the equipment, the hours are all wrong, so they just can't catch up. And that's true with every major port in Europe, in the East Coast of the U.S., on the West Coast. I'm sure Seattle has problems too. And then there's a trucking shortage worldwide because a lot of people are shining this. I was close to retiring, and so I'm getting out, and the wages were never that good to begin with.
Not only that, Dave, but what I'm hearing now is that trucks are breaking down, and because of supply chain issues, they can't find the parts to fix the trucks.
Right, because let's say you have a giant Kenworth, and also one of the tiny little chips goes out on it. Well, there's also a chip shortage, and you can't get that one $40 part to fix a $100,000 Kenworth, so your truck is gone. Anyway, so there's a lot of reasons why this the logistics of this shipping season are frankly going to be worse than last year in the pandemic. So plan ahead. That means probably do your big Christmas sale earlier than you would do, probably by about 2 weeks. Yeah. And let people know why. Like, trust me, shipping is going to be bad this year. So, hey, gang, we're doing our shipping early. But here is one little thing. This is not part of your question, Mark, that might be to all of our benefits. Stores are going to run out of stuff this year. I'm not joking about that. There is going to be a shortage of things that for Christmas giving. So here's where we have the advantage as small owner operators. We have all of our supply with us.
Yeah.
So we can say, are you looking for something that you wanted to give a book this year, but literally every manga book can't be bought on Amazon? Have you tried, by the way, Brad? Like, there are so many manga titles right now you cannot get on Amazon because they just can't get them.
Yeah.
So like, hey, do you have a manga lover in your life? Well, and they can't get any of the books. Maybe try one of these comics from, Webtoons or Sheldon or this or that. And so what I'm saying is we have the advantage of stock on hand. A lot of bookstores won't. That will be a problem. So you can do that. But I would recommend doing your sale, your big Christmas sale earlier by about 2 to 3 weeks. And then I would also recommend that, Mark, the other options, one of the reasons why we can't suggest doing something about this USPS price hike and slowdown is that it's not like FedEx is better or UPS is better. Those prices are going to murder you. So you as a small business owner can't make that switch. To Brad's statement, Pirate Ship can also ship UPS. So in the rare case where UPS ground might be able to meet or match USPS, then great, do that. Go with God. That's awesome. But 99% of the time, USPS, even with these hiked rates, will still beat everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dave, while we're still in the first half, I've got a real quick topic. People are hearing this in the first week of November, but over here, it's the first week of October. And Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp was down for a better part of yesterday, all day Monday. Facebook was down. There was a lot of conspiracy theories about why it went down. And of course, Instagram and WhatsApp also having big problems. And that kind of was a really good example, an illustration, if you will, of something that you're talking about on this show constantly.
And that is to keep many legs under the table.
Yeah.
There were many quickly turned around articles yesterday where they focused on either podcasters, small businesses, mid-sized businesses that had built all their ordering and their fulfillment around some type of Facebook system.
Yeah.
And all of which sales completely stopped. It was like a power had gone out at their business, right? Because without Facebook, they couldn't operate. And we have said this many a time, and it's kind of an evergreen topic for us, but do not put all your eggs in one basket. You want to build your business such that if any one leg got knocked out from under your table, you still have 14 other legs holding that table up. Yeah. Would it be painful? Yes. Like, for example, would it be painful if I lost all my convention income for 2020 and 2021? Absolutely. Yes. Does it ruin my business? No, because I have many legs under the table. So it's a hit. It's an absolute hit, and it's painful, but it's not ruinous to me. And so this this Facebook moment is one of those examples where don't have it all under one table.
Yeah. And that means that I have this conversation quite often, especially with younger creators, when I'm doing like a TikTok live, and I say, you need to have your own website. And they get very panicked. They're like, oh, a website, I can't do that. I can't figure it out. It's not like just putting something up on Instagram. And what I tell the people is all the same. And that is, okay, you don't need to do it today, but you do need to be moving in that direction as your comic builds, especially if you just launched this year, if you just hit the button, as we say, okay, you don't need that website right now, but it is something you need to be doing. Here's a quick aside. It's not as complicated as you think it is. In fact, we've got lots of information on doing that in the ComicLab Discord server. There's good information, I'll just tell you right off the bat, on webcomics.com. And there's good information in previous ComicLab episodes, both the regular episodes and Pro Tips, where we talk about these things. All right. It's not as complicated as you think it is. It's not as daunting. You can do it, but it's something you need to start doing if you're going to build this into a business. Having your own website on days like yesterday when Facebook and Instagram are down entirely, and you might have orders coming in. All that person needs to do if they really need to order something from you is put your comic name or the product name into Google. They'll find your website and they'll be able to order through you. This is a really good example of not only what Dave says, keep many legs under the table, but what I'm saying very frequently, and that is you need your own home on the web that you can control outside of the algorithm, outside of all these other things. You need a place that you can control.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
So, Brad, a quick update for everybody. We had mentioned in the past that Brad and I are very, very excited for an upcoming appearance at the Schulz Museum. And when we apparently, it's good to acknowledge that sometimes you can be a part of the problem. Apparently, in saying November 22 is going to be our appearance for the Schulz Museum, some people took that to say November 22nd of this year, which I guess is an understandable mistake. We meant November 2022, the year 2022. So we've got over a year from now, we're going to be appearing at the Schulz Museum. So for anyone wondering or questioning or might have misheard or misunderstood that, it is going to be November. We don't know the date exactly. November of 2022. Yeah. Brad and I and ComicLab will be making a podcast appearance at the show. We're going to be doing a live recorded auditorium podcast of the show at the Schulz Museum, which is super fun. Yeah. We're going to have a docent-led tour of the museum, which is super fun. And then we're going to go out and grab Brad, I think, is bringing his favorite box wine. We're going to go and have a delicious glass of box wine. And maybe we'll find a Wizard's Brazier somewhere around Santa Rosa, California.
That's right.
I mean, it's really, we are trying to plan it to be where if you or the people in your life want to plan a trip, that there will at least be 3 podcast-related events at the Schulz Museum. And then, of course, you can enjoy the Santa Rosa atmosphere as well and the wine country up there. Yeah. But as you drive around Santa Rosa, there's also just gigantic statues of Peanuts characters around Santa Rosa. So as a cartoonist, it's a fun destination, but it's in November 2022. Absolutely. So, Dave, do we have another question from one of our $5 Patreon backers? We sure do, my friend. So this one, I'll keep this one nameless because it's an interesting question, and I think it's probably best. So, hello, Brad and Dave. As married men who are also self-employed creatives doing most of your work in solitude, do you have any advice on what qualities to look for in a wife that is, and I'll just say romantic partner, in a romantic partner that is compatible with this lifestyle? And how do you balance the necessary moments of solitude with the equally necessary moments of being present with your romantic partner? I have dated women in the past who have either shown no interest in my work at all or seemingly get jealous of the time I spend working on my dreams, as they feel like I should watch reality TV with them instead. I have faith in myself that I will become self-employed, but I also want to find a companion. However, I only have so many hours in the week, and the thought of going down the rabbit hole of dating to find the right girl seems like a lot of time wasted. Any insight or guidance the two of you may have from personal experience would be greatly appreciated. P.S. Love the podcast. Listen to it while I'm delivering. Oh, wait a minute. This is so cool. I don't know that we had an OBGYN before listening to the show. This is amazing. He listens to us while he's delivering. Could you imagine in the delivery room, you know, you're pushing that baby and then you hear my voice over the speakers where we're welcoming a child into the world. Cut to, it's just Zappos. It's just Zappos deliveries. Okay. So Brad, I have a lot to unpack in this question, but I will let you take first crack on this one. So I think there's a broader question we can answer for a universal, but there's very specifics in this question that I think we should address first. So why don't I hand it over to you, my friend? Yeah, my advice is get used to being single. Oh, jeez. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Actually, I give that advice to a lot of people who are looking for a romantic partner. Is that you've got to be comfortable in your own skin before anyone can be comfortable around you. So I tell people that enjoy being single, enjoy going out and being on your own and doing things. And when you are most comfortable with yourself is when you're going to find that person who's most
compatible with you because they're getting the real version of you, right?
Right.
So that's my first thing. But also, there's a couple of red flags in your question that we need to address. Now, first, the first one is I've dated women in the past who have either shown no interest in my work or get jealous of the time I spend working on my dreams because they feel I should be watching reality TV with them instead. Well, see, that's the problem. If you have a romantic partner in your life, they're going to want you to spend time with them. That's part of being a partner, is spending time together. Them spending time in the room while you've got your back to them at the drawing board or at the digital tablet, that's not spending time with somebody. Nobody's going to want that. Okay. And you have to be realistic about that. Nobody wants to be in the same room with you if you're ignoring them. And having a romantic partner means sharing your time with someone. And if that's not something you're prepared to do, then you have to be honest with yourself about that. If this life that we live is not, I can guarantee you, although Dave and I spent copious amounts of time working on our comic throughout the years, we also spent a lot of time with our romantic partners throughout the years. You cannot afford to just ignore that person because they're going to get very bored with that and leave you, right? I mean, is that, do you agree, Dave?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of word choices, and so, this might have been accidental, so I'm trying to be kind about that. But there's a couple of word choices in this letter that make me a little nervous about the word partnership implies equality, implies two people working together in a partnership. Yeah. And there's a couple of word choices that were just sort of kind of flaggy for me on like, I don't know that you should think about it exactly that way in terms of like not interested in my work and a little denigrating of what their interests are. And like, it's an equal and respective partnership. It might just be that the right person hasn't come across your path that enjoys and welcomes and wants to help in the same way that you might not have yet been the right person to welcome what their interests are and want to help in their interests. Yeah. Because that really is what I was trying to get at, was the definition of partner is two people trying to help the other one live their best life. And it's not always happy roses in terms of like, oh, look at us, we're helping each other live our best life. Yeah. But you're at least trying, you're making the attempt. And so there's just the tiniest element of bitterness in the way you phrased your question that has me a little bit nervous that you're not treating this as a partnership of two equals coming at each other. Yeah, Brad, keep going.
Well, I when I saw I only have so many hours in the week, and the thought of going down the rabbit hole of dating to find the right girl seems like a lot of time wasted. That tells me that you're not in the proper mental area to date. Right. This isn't about, in other words, this isn't about like going to the store to buy a carton.
I was going to say the same thing. This is not like buying a product where like, I have paid $50. Now I want a VCR that works, that kind of thing.
This is not about efficiency. Efficiency is great in a lot of ways. In romance, efficiency is not one of the top words that should be on your list. Inefficiency sometimes is downright delightful in romantic situations, as a matter of fact. And by the way, that's not putting you down. I want, as a friend, as somebody who was once in a very similar spot in their life, I can recognize this. And I know at that point, a young Brad Geiger was not in the right mental space to date at that point. I didn't know who I was yet. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. All these things that I'm saying because I've experienced them. Okay. So what I'm telling you is take some time to get to know yourself better and really find the joy in being with yourself. And try and when you get to that point, I think it's going to be a lot more it's going to be a lot more advantageous to you and to the person that you're dating that that you do know who that is. This is not something you should be looking at in terms of efficiency. This is when you're dating somebody, it should be about exploring that person, getting to know that person, getting not only telling them what your dreams are, but getting to know what their dreams are, what they like to do, what they're interested in. Those are important too, and that's something that doesn't show up in this question so much. What's in it for them? as much as what's in it for you.
I guess that's what I was getting at. The flag for me was that it was very me focused, of like, they are not servicing me, or they're not, my needs are not being met. And it's like, part of the joy of a relationship is saying like, God, you're an interesting person. I want to know more about you. I want to help you. Hey, what do you think about this? Or how would you do XYZ? Those are the unspoken joys of a relationship that I don't see here in terms of, like, I don't know that it's worth the time. It doesn't feel efficient. They haven't been interested in my work. To Brad's point, I feel like it is not the worst thing in the world to take might be 6 months, might be 18 months, might be 24 months of just really locking down who you are, who you want to be, how you want to get there. And then what's an odd thing about life is that once you become more and more comfortable with yourself, it's actually an easier entrance into all sorts of social situations, because you know who you are, you know who you want to be, you're on the path to get there, and it makes it easier for people to be like, wow, that person's interesting. I really want to jump in on that, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Taking this to a broad view, Dave, speaking to anybody, not just this question asker, but anybody that's looking for a romantic partnership, do we have any advice on just romance in general?
Yeah, well, I also, before I go on, I just want to say, Brad and I obviously don't know you. And so I don't want you to feel attacked in this sort of thing. Is that we had 9 sentences to judge from in terms of what you're coming at here. So I just want to say, like, neither Brad nor I are trained psychologists or psychiatrists, and so or even relationship experts. It's not really our forte. But I will say there's some fundamentals that are worth exploring, which is that human contact, whether it be friendships that are worth cherishing, or whether it be work relationships that are worth supporting, it's a give and take of not just me and what do they do for me. It's a give and take of like being there for people and hearing out their problems and listening. And I say that as an introvert. It's still there are moments that I cherish of either work relationships, friendships, romantic partnerships, where it's like, no, those meant things to me in my life because it was a partnership, because it was a co-equal listening of who they are. So as far as broader advice, Brad, for me, it goes back to kindness. And I know I sound hokey when I say this, but kindness and being able to put yourself in the shoes of other people, to kind of mentally walk a mile in their shoes. You can see why most people do what they do if you mentally walk the childhood that they had, or the last 10 years of their career, or, you know what I mean? Like, if you are it also makes you a better writer. I will say that wholeheartedly. The ability to quietly and in the back of your mind walk in their shoes for 5 minutes and see how their life shaped them, see what their decisions became because of what they've lived. It makes you a better writer, but it also makes you better for relationships, makes you better for friendships, work partnerships, romantic partnerships. So I would say the kindness, the empathy, the emotive ability to put yourself in other people's shoes is one of the greatest things you can give yourself as a writer and also as a human on this earth. Brad, what do you think?
Absolutely. I co-sign that 110%. And also just to take your time with somebody and really get to know them, because we put a lot of value on certain things in a relationship, but and romance novels are filled with those things, right? But the things that really make a relationship work are, do you two have similar ideas and principles when it comes to a family? Do you two have similar principles when it comes to spending money? Are you really compatible on all of these ways? That's really what makes a relationship go. So as you're dating, again, be as inefficient as possible in your dating and take your time and really get to know this other person, because it at the end of the day, yes, it's a romance, but it's also a partnership. That's why we call it a romantic partnership. And this is somebody you're going to be making a lot of decisions jointly. And I can't tell you how important it is. We say it all the time. Carolyn and I, my wife and I, very much think with the same brain. And there are certain things that she feels passionately about that at the end of the day, I don't care about, right? Yeah. When those things come up, she makes the decision. And I make it a point not to second guess her opinion or her decision.
Because you've ceded that ground, right? Out of love in part.
Like,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like you make that. In fact, there's a lot of things that I'm like, you'd be doing me a favor by making this decision.
Right, exactly. And by the way, the reverse of that is true. I know because I've been speaking to you that sometimes she's like, Brad will make that decision. Yeah. He cares about that. So that's fine.
There are certain things, and there are certain things when that doesn't happen that we meet together and we talk it out. We make sense out of it and then come up with what's usually a compromise. But that's what a partnership is all about. And there's, by the way, I just gave you one example. There's 100 others of completely different ways of doing it that works for 100 other types of couples. Right. Your job in dating is to find the person that's right for you. And again, I'm going to come back to my first statement is that before you can do that, you got to find out who you are and who you really want to be. And that's a journey in and of itself. It was a long journey for me. And you've got to take the time that you need to find who you are.
Okay, so then I have two other lasting bits of information that I want to share. Yeah. One is about communication, and the other one is about separating romantic partnership from business partnership from roommate, right? Okay, so that's the second one. But the first one I want to talk about is, and I know I'm going to sound like an Amish farmer when I say this, but in a lot of ways, technology has made us talk less with one another. Yeah. Right? Now, I know I sound like, oh, sure, now you got to get on your horse and take your carriage into town, Bradley. That's just me on my Dutch farm. Yes. Anyway, but what I'm getting at, though, is that dates will often be like going to see a movie, playing a video game. The far better options are to sit and talk or play a board game because you're actually going to be conversing with one another. Yeah. And so removing technology from the early parts of a relationship were important because you get to as my wife says, you cut into the onion, like you get down to the deeper layers of the onion faster. Yeah. You know, we used to have dates where we would talk literally for 12 hours, just sitting talking. Yeah. Maybe some smooching, but mainly talking. But that was the early part of it, and we found out, like Brad did, that we shared a worldview and that we had very similar, like Venn diagram wise, 90% crossover in the way we view the world, right? And so that kind of communication is important. So it can't just be like, let's watch a movie, let's play a video game, let's share electronics together. That's all perfectly lovely, but the communication, the direct communication is so much better in that first year, especially of dating. And then I will say this, once you're in the relationship, this, to my wife's infinite credit, she taught me that it's a really important life skill to be able to say, hey, roommate issue instead of relation. Like if Brad and I were in a relationship and I could say, not Brad, I don't love you anymore, but I could just say roommate issue, Brad, you need to wash the dishes. That's a roommate issue. That's not a relationship issue. Now it might be part of bigger relationship if someone not contributing, someone not taking part in the relationship as an equal. But if I just say roommate issue, Brad knows I'm not taking a shot at him. I'm taking a shot at this life moment, at this action. Yeah. And then you could also say, hey, business partnership. There are times where Glow and I have to make some kind of business decision that frankly doesn't impact our romantic or our roommate issues. It's just a business partnership moment. Like, hey, how are we going to do the mortgage for this or this? Or how are we going to, that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And what I'm getting at is, it is worth almost audibly saying it out loud. Let's talk business for a minute, because then you take off the romantic hat and you put on the business hat, right? And you become a different part of your relationship. So I will say, this is more broad tips for all of us. When you're saying, hey, I have a creative question or a creative conversation I need to have with you, that's saying, hey, take off your romantic partner hat. I want to ask you some creative topics about how I'm doing my cartooning right now. And a good partnership will be able to chime in. I know that Brad has that there are business aspects that they share and talk about. There are creative aspects that they share and talk about, and then romantic and roommate stuff, and all of that's separate. And yes, there's going to be bleed over, but you really try to keep them separate because they don't have to be. A roommate issue doesn't have to impact the romantic partnership unless it really goes south and Brad has really not been doing the dishes, then we'll see how things go on Friday night. That's the thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Dave, we've got time for one more question here before we run out of show. And it is this question that comes in from Andrew Bickett, who says, hello, Dave and Brad. I am one of your non-artist listeners, and I am a veterinarian by profession. We had an OBGYN and a veterinarian
He
today.
was not
That
an
was
OBGYN, Brad.
Most of the time, I think I don't have an artistic bone in my body, though I do love comics and other artistic works. What I love about this podcast is listening to two successful entrepreneurs discuss what gives them drive and passion for their work, as I am a business owner at a solo doctor practice pursuing my own professional dreams. My question is this: what things completely unrelated to your field give you drive and passion for your business endeavors? That comes in from Andrew. Thank you so much, Dr. Bickett. Dave, what gives you passion and drive that's outside of comics?
What a fun question. And by the way, Brad, you know how our one thing that we always complain about as a small business owner is the regulatory filings for taxes?
Yeah.
I got to say, as far as being a small, kudos to Andrew on this, because as far as being a small business owner, I can imagine that the regulatory filings for a veterinarian or a doctor's office are a bajillion times worth. So Andrew, a doff of the cap to you on that. And also, I'm so glad that you enjoy the show and that you get value out of it. It is one of Brad and my great joys that we have people write in like, I don't do cartoons, I don't do art in general. And yet my accounting business, I love listening to the show because it gives me a spark for whatever I'm working on. And gosh, that's a nice thing to hear. So thank you for that, Andrew. I will say there's a couple answers. Go ahead, Brad. Yeah, sorry.
Plus,
I cut you off.
as you know, Dave and I are both big dog lovers. So that also makes us really, really happy to know that you're just right in there with us.
You know what's funny, though? I know you're joking because you're not a dog lover, but wouldn't it be lovely if we lived in a town that Andrew was in? And I'll tell you what I mean. It's kind of like Ryan North. I love this idea from Ryan North, and I always want to steal it. He has this idea of Friendship Island. My friend Kobe also has this, where she wants to build like a community of like just the 30 or 40 friends that you have, and then a little shop, and everybody can bike to each other's house. Ryan North has that, where everybody wants to live on the same street. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if Andrew was the local veterinarian and we could all go to Andrew's house and then bring our dogs? And I don't know. I just think that idea, I know it's stupid and naive, but I love the idea that Ryan has of Friendship Island, where it's just a small island and everybody's got their own little thing. Anyway, all right. So as far as passion and drive that is not related to that, that gives us passion and drive for our business endeavors and our artistic endeavors. I will say this pandemic, if we're trying to find a silver lining in it, has been nice in that it's given me a couple of sparks, like free time basically to pursue a couple of sparks. One was woodworking and one was gardening. I had real success my first year of the pandemic with my garden, did great, had so many vegetables that I was like handing them off to neighbors because I had too many. Second one, I got a really bad case of caterpillars early on, and boy, they went to town on my crops. And so I just didn't have the farming experience to know how to effectively deal with caterpillars. Because they can really, over a night, you're like, geez, Louise, you guys ate a lot. And so that was a learning moment. But I will say that feeling of farming and of like taking care of plants was really affirming in a time of so much death, to have that kind of hands in the soil kind of a feeling, which was lovely. And then you remember, Brad, with the woodworking, where I built that shipping desk. I built this big 8-foot by, I don't know, 7-foot tall desk. And during the pandemic shutdown, and I kind of went nuts on it, as you do, I'm sure. I was like, you know what I could do? I could buy a bunch of woodworking chisels and tools. Oh, I bet I could drop $1,000 easy on all of this. And then literally I had to go like, all right, slow it down, champ. You built one table. Maybe bring it down a notch. You don't need to drop a lot of cash on this. And then I will say like Brad, I also get a spark out of talking or listening to someone else who has a spark for their passion that has nothing to do with what I'm involved in. So this is a long time ago, but about 2 or 3 years ago, but before the pandemic, I was at a party at a friend's house, and I met Daniel, I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong, Daniel Vosovic, who was on Project Runway, Brad, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
He now owns and runs thekit.com. And you know, Brad, Dave Kellett, huge fashion lover. If there's one thing that I am, Brad, a fashionista.
Yeah.
I look it, I flaunt it. You wouldn't know it from this basic gray T-shirt that hides a dad bod.
No,
but
you wouldn't.
There's nobody who loves fashion more than Dave Kellett. Anyway. But I will say this. First of all, Daniel was a lovely guy, and we had a really funny conversation. But
yeah,
I learned a lot about how the business side of fashion works and the problems with fast fashion and how he was trying to reinvent how fashion can be made locally rather than shipped across the globe to sell an $8 T-shirt.
Yeah.
And so Daniel was really fascinating to the point where I did a bunch of research on it afterward. And I don't give two flying shits about fashion. I could care less about fashion. But I recognized that Daniel's passion fired me up for it, such that I did a bunch of research on it. And the same thing is kind of happening now with that Stanley Tucci show of Searching for Italy. First of all, he's compelling as heck. Daniel Tucci has a wonderful narration voice. But his love for food, I, for the most part, have a passing interest in food. I'm not a chef, but I've been fascinated by Italian cooking since watching Stanley Tucci's show. So I don't know. That's my quick run of passions. How about you?
I usually feel like I don't have a good answer for this question when people ask it, except I realize that I actually do, but it's much different than yours. My answer is, and I don't know why this is, my answer is Halloween. I get really creatively charged up this time of year. It happened again, and it happened in September. My sketchbook is overflowing with ideas. I'm super excited about, I spent a good part of the weekend putting my Halloween lights up on the front porch and on the back deck.
On the back deck too?
Oh yeah, we strung lights, and you know they sell those things that's supposed to project like images on your house. It's supposed to be for a suburban house because it's got a stake that you put in your lawn, and I don't have a lawn, but and it projects these ghostly images up on your house. I've got two of those now, one for the front porch and one that's projecting ghosts and bats and spiders on the back of the house from the back deck.
Knowing your street in Philadelphia, did you have to go to the neighbor across the street and be like, hey, Bob, can I install this on your deck to project onto my house? How did that work?
I've got just enough room that I'm able to do it, like, because you can focus it and everything. But I've been going nuts, and not only with decorations, but we're going to throw our Halloween party again. I don't know what it is about. Either it's the time of the year and like the weather's getting cooler, the change of temperatures, the food choices change a little bit. You start going for a lot of soups and chili and pasta this time of year, whereas that doesn't taste as good so much in the summer. I don't know whether it's that or the fixating on death, but it really brings out the best in me.
The fixating on death. I don't know if it's the costumes or the makeup or the pageantry or the fixation on death or what it could be. I don't know what it could be.
Yeah, something about it, but Halloween really charges me up creatively. Like I said, I a bunch of stuff I started doing in September because I was going through some brainstorming, and I had a bunch of ideas that were not quite Halloween related, but came out during that brainstorming session. Right. Those got fast tracked for September stuff. A bunch of them are going to hold for November. It's going to slap over into next month. I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on for my Patreon backers. That's suited for this time of year. I do an e-comic every year this time of year.
Yeah, that's true.
That's going to be even, I think it's up to 90 pages. It's going to be even more. There's so much stuff that I get really excited about. And I don't know why that is. I don't have that experience. Like I will probably watch that Stanley Tucci thing and be just fine about it, but it won't affect me the way it affects you so much. I don't know what it is, but I can always count on it. This time of year, I get really charged up creatively.
Well, as a friend, even from 3,000 miles away, I have seen the amount of time and effort you put into Halloween. And I'll give you 3 examples.
Yeah.
The year that you built your Doc Ock costume with the arms.
Yes.
As a friend, I was in admiration. I was like, he put hours into that, hours into that costume. And I haven't done that since I was a teenager, put that much time into a costume. You went nuts. And then, even last year, during the lockdown, you figured out a whole engineering scenario where with socially distancing, you could launch a candy at a kid's face at like 500 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yes.
So for those that don't remember or didn't see the video, Brad has a raised porch deck. I don't know what you would call it. Porch, probably, right?
A raised porch.
On his Philadelphia house. And so he figured out gravity can be my friend. I'll build some tubing and I'll cut out a ghost and the candy will shoot out the ghost's mouth. Well, something about the math Brad hadn't figured out, because the candy didn't just delightfully fall into the kid's pumpkin. It would come shooting out at their eyeballs at like Mach 2. And Brad's like, Happy Halloween! Whoa! Ow! Mommy!
And it was great because it actually, since the hole was, I drilled it where the ghost's mouth would be. So it looked like this ghost was vomiting out forcefully large amounts of chocolate and sugar and candy. And it was great. We had a great, in fact, everybody's asking if I'm going to put it up.
Are you going to use it
year.
again? I hope you kept it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Too much work went into that thing for just 1 year. I got to figure out how getting it built again is going to be, because I didn't do anything with a plan or a purpose. I was screwing screws and putting brackets in, just whatever I had on hand, I was grabbing and throwing it. So I got to figure out how to get it set up again. But yeah, we're going to do that again. We're going to throw our Halloween party. I've got a bunch of my son's friends who went trick-or-treating for the first time at our house, who had never gone trick-or-treating before. And then they've just come back every year, and it's just like a big party that builds year after year after year, more and more people. I'm looking forward to it like crazy this year.
That my daughter's school had a exchange student from South Korea that came out trick-or-treating with us. The dad from Seoul was, first of all, he's a delightful human being. Yeah. But he at one point, about half an hour into the the night, he's like, this is the weirdest thing. We're going door to door and people are just giving us candy. It's cold. We're dressed up in these weird costumes that are, he's like, this is a weird custom. I'm like, it is a weird custom. Yes, but it's fun.
On the face of it, yes. When you put it that way, it's downright bizarre. Face of it,
it's a weird custom. How did you get your love for Halloween? I'm a little bit fascinated by this.
I honestly don't know. Part of it really speaks to this outlet. It was an early outlet to be creative as a kid, right? It was this early outlet. You can dress up however you want. You can dress up and be whoever you want to be for the night. You can have that experience for the night. If you want to be a Dracula, you can be a Dracula. If you want to be an astronaut, you can be an astronaut, right? It was that first real, and then everything about Halloween is creative. You're carving pumpkins. Right? You're doing a lot of that kind of stuff. You're putting images onto.
So you're saying there's a lot of arts and crafts involved in Halloween. Yeah. That makes sense.
And it just always appealed to me because I love that. And not only that, but the thing that I really like is you see people being creative who don't often express their creativity otherwise, right?
Yes. That's 1,000% true.
You see that person from across the street who's just, you always see him, he's got a tie on, he's carrying his briefcase, or she's just hustling off to her job. And
but come Halloween,
Yeah, all of a sudden you've got a witch and a warlock across the street from you. And it's a time where you see people being a little bit childish, a little bit silly. They're letting their hair down, and it's like a endorsed thing. Everybody's okay. Like if I go out dressed up like a Dracula tomorrow, they're going to look at me funny. But on that one day, it's okay to be creative and silly and expressive and nutty because everybody's doing it.
You know what? You're right. I often forget that that for some people, whatever the holiday might be, and there's a billion to choose from. Yeah, that's their chance to be creative. And for you as a kid, you're right. That was the first chance for you to really go to town. And because I imagine I'm just imagining young Brad in Michigan, like, I get to dress up as whatever I want. This is amazing.
It really was. It really was.
You could put away your leather woven belt with the triple loops that we had in the 70s and 80s, and you're like, oh, I get to be one of the X-Men. I'm going to pick Cypher. His power is to understand any language.
Oh my God, I can't believe you brought that one full circle. That's amazing.
I will say one other thing before we close this up for Andrew. I just thought of one, and it's one as a friend Brad has never gotten to experience. But someday, I'm going to get you out to LA, or I'm going to time it when you are in LA. I do game nights, Brad, that even my wife is like, you go nuts for game nights, where I invite, I think the biggest one I ever had was 65, 70 people over, and there's teams, but you accrue points as an individual. It's this whole system that I learned from Neil Patrick Harris and that I've like adapted over time, because he always had great game nights, and then I adopted it and made it, I think, better. I think I do it better. Anyway, I go nuts, and we have really good prizes, and I love being the game master, and I always do it for my birthday, and everyone's like, no, you should play for your birthday. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It brings me so much joy to be the game master and get to watch 65 people have fun on my birthday. Like for an introverted extrovert, it's so fun. That's to me the perfect way, because then the focus is not on me, but I get to have all the fun watching people play the games. And so for me, my game nights, I'm not kidding, where I spend probably 10 to 15 hours planning them out. So I've started to have games where there's like physical props and bells, and the TV is involved for certain like pre-recorded things, and like I go nuts for it, and it's so fun. I love it so much.
This sounds amazing, especially since, I mean, you call it Game Master. The official title for what you're talking about is Game Show Host. And it's for somebody that always makes fun of me for game shows, your big fantasy is to be Bob Barker.
Well, yeah, okay, it is kind of a game show, but it's also 70 people literally running around your house playing running charades and stuff. Like, that's so fun. I should tell you, by the way, I don't know if this has ever come up on the show. We were doing a game. This was a game night, maybe 2 or 3 game nights ago. And a friend of ours was a casting agent, and she was there, and she goes, God, Dave, you are so good at a certain kind of presentational thing. We have a small role. Do you want to come in and read for it? And I was like, oh my God, Amy, I would love to. That'd be great. I'll come in. She's like, come in tomorrow. We'll have you read for it. Brad, I went in. I could not have bombed worse in terms of seeing the look on Amy's face. Is like, oh yeah, that was. Yeah, Dave, thanks so much for coming in. That was great. I borked it so bad. I was like, because in the context of game night, I was casual, I was relaxed, but then you go into the casting room. I had never done that before. All my friends have, but I've never done that before, which is you and a camera and a casting agent, and they're reading lines to you. It felt incredibly artificial. And I was like, yeah, this is really great. I'm like having prepubescent voice cracking as I'm doing the line delivery. I laughed about it on my way out, because I was like, that was terrible.
Can you tell? Do you know what it was for, or what the project was? Can you tell us?
I do, but I won't say. I won't say, because I don't want to out them. But I say it to own myself that it was terrible. I was terrible at it. I was so comfortable at game night, but then you put me in the casting scenario. No, I couldn't do it. Could not do it. Not my wheelhouse.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, there's on the bright side, that means that there's all the more time for you to do this, which you are really good at, and that is recording ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my Halloween-loving friend, Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com. By the way, entire Halloween storylines to go check out. If you have not been reading, go jump over at evil-comic.com.
And my good friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped, and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
And, of course, our sponsor for this week, the good folks at Wacom at WACOM.com. Wacom.com, the makers of the Wacom One. And ComicLab is made possible by your support on Patreon.com/ComicLab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/ComicLab.
I was telling my students this at college. I am so glad that I'm old and dull and married. When I look at what they have to put up with as young people dating today, I couldn't stand it. With dating apps, I had trouble with the Dunkin' Donuts app. Could you see me on a dating app?
No. What's funny to me is that speaking as a now long past dating age fella, I look at dating apps and I like fascinatedly look over the shoulder of friends that are using them, because to me, it's like the Denny's menu. The Denny's menu is all photos, no words, because people are half drunk. They're not really making good decisions. It's 2 a.m. That's what dating apps feel like to me. It feels like the Denny's menu. It's like, we've designed this menu for idiots. And that's what it seems like.
We've designed this menu for bad choices at 2 a.m.
Yeah.